video? Morning. This is Economic Forum, and this is what economy looks like now in Ukraine. I will try a little bit in Polish, if you allow me. Chcę podziękować Polakom, polskiemu kierownictwu za pomoc Ukraińcom w tym mrocznym czasie dla mojego kraju. W wyniku wojny w ciągu ostatnich 17 dni przyjechało do Polski ponad 1,5 miliona obywateli mojego kraju, w tym wielu kobiet i dzieci. Wiem, że u domu nie czuję ich się obco. Z braterskim dobrocią witali się nasz lud w waszych rodzinach. Dziękuję za to. Jak powiedział wczoraj prezydent Zelenski, w ostatnich dniach widzieliśmy, że nie ma już granic między naszymi narodami i krajami. Fizyczne lub historyczne. I na pewno dowolna osobista. Walczymy o wolność naszą i waszą. I bardzo dziękuję za pomoc w tym. In his speech before the Polish Sejm yesterday, President Zelensky said that Ukraine and Poland have come a long path together. The path to warmth and friendship. I wanted to talk about my path to this conference, this economic conference. It has started in mid-November when I met Viktor Babinski, the brilliant Polish student at Yale, who invited me here to speak about the security risks in the region. That time in New Haven, we spoke about risks. And I was putting like 1% for the full-scale war in Ukraine. This risk materialized. This is for those students who study risk management. In January, when Russia was building up its 190,000 troops legions in the borders of Ukraine, together with my daughter Sonia and another Polish friend and colleague at the IMF board, Piotr Trabinski, we have discussed how to launch a campaign similar to the famous global campaign of 1982, Let Poland be Poland. We thought about some peaceful project under the slogan, Let Ukraine be Ukraine, but unfortunately, 40 years after the demonstrations of Polish solidarność, we came late, because on February 24, Putin has started his bloody war in Ukraine. In the first days of the war, I contacted my friends in Poland who were ready to help my nation. Artur Cisz, Piotr Malkowski, Andrzej Kapirski, Tomek Kubiek, these are my former colleagues at Bank Pekao S.A., Piotr Mietkowski from BNP Bank Polska, and many others. Everyone was very very supportive. Together with my friends, we managed to use several big facilities on the Polish side to use them as warehouses to supply the humanitarian goods on Ukraine. Thank you again, my friends, for this invaluable help which saves lives. And I know that you personally can feel and the emotions and pain of ordinary Ukrainians whose lives have been abruptly affected by the war, which Russia definitely needs to stop immediately. I was pleased to also hear that many Polish friends congratulate Ukraine for bravery of its defenders, the resilience of the people of all ages, and their spirit. I also admire my comrades, including the representatives of the Ukrainian authorities, who implemented the appropriate emergency measures in their efforts to stabilize markets and the economy under the most challenging circumstances. At IMF, we work very closely with them, sometimes operating from the underground locations all around the country, with the noise of explosions and missiles on the site. In the last 2 weeks, authorities showed their strength and resilience, as a result of which the banking system works without disruptions, salaries, pensions, and government payments are paid, mails are delivered, and the state is functioning despite a severe war. But the resilience was shown not only by the strongest men, but also by old women who had also to go their paths. And it also relates to my mom. My mom was born in 1941, just after the start of the Second World War on the territory of Ukraine. And last week, this 81-year-old woman spent 39 hours on the evacuation from Odessa, our native town, including 29 hours in the freezing cold to cross the border by foot. I spoke with her during those hours, and she was crying. As a son, willing to support her, I felt helpless. And only what I could do is trying to keep her spirit up. Despite being resilient, like my mom, my country is now crying, seeing millions of refugees wade to Europe. To be precise, 2,504,893 people have fled Ukraine into neighboring countries since the start of the full-scale invasion until yesterday, so in 16 days. As I have already said, more than 1.5 million people have crossed the western border into Poland alone. But not only. 225,000 evacuated to Hungary, 176,000 to Slovakia, 105,000 to Moldova, 85,000 to Romania. Thanks to all these kind nations who accept Ukrainians in need. European Union and United Nations estimate that the refugees' flow to the neighboring countries may come to 7 million people, while the number of internally displaced people may reach up to 12 million people. So, unfortunately, the worst is still to come. Like my mom, my country is crying, reading reports on shelling civilian objects in Ukraine, homes, their gardens, hospitals, bridges, roads, and therefore observing the humanitarian catastrophe on a global scale, in which ordinary people pay the price which they didn't deserve to. Most Ukrainians have left their homes with necessities only, like cash and cell phones. And we discussed yesterday that most probably many of them will never come back, since there is already nowhere to come back. They don't have their homes. But while crying, we will definitely rebuild our country, and here we again will rely on the support of the Polish friends. There will be plenty of business opportunities after the war in Ukraine, and I call you, as students of the leading UK universities and future economists, to unite and brainstorm what kind of support you may give as well. I will be always happy to discuss with you your thoughts. Many companies have quitted Russian market, bearing losses to punish the Russian dictator, and I'm sure they will have many opportunities in the rebuilt Ukraine. My country is crying, almost 2 weeks now, seeing a massive shelling of the seaport of Mariupol, through which 50% of the Ukrainian export is going. Russian troops have been shelling residential districts and infrastructure there, so the city, which had 500,000 inhabitants before the war, is now without electricity, heating, gas, food, and water. Or when the Black Sea is blocked by the Russian Navy, not allowing Ukrainian shipping and export companies to fulfill their obligations to feed 400 million people around the world who are dependent on the rich Ukrainian agricultural production. It's in our common interest to defeat Russia as fast as possible. Many countries in the Middle East and Asia rely on Ukrainian wheat and corn to feed their people. To avoid a worldwide humanitarian catastrophe, the agricultural season to Ukraine should start immediately. My country is crying about the largest airplane in the world with name Mriya, or Dream in Ukraine. This Ukrainian plane was used in most fragile states, helping tens of countries and millions of people to address the consequences of the natural disasters, bringing there the most needed food and equipment. Unfortunately, it will not be able to do it further since it was destroyed by Russian troops. But those troops didn't destroy our dream, and we will rebuild these planes once the war is finished. My country is crying when the enemy is capturing or bombing the nuclear power plants. Everyone in Ukraine and Poland remembers Chernobyl. I believe most of you have seen what happened last week when the largest nuclear plant in Europe was hit by a missile, and the invader troops didn't allow brave Ukrainian firemen to bring fire down in order to save Europe from another nuclear disaster. I want to stress that my country is crying but fighting, also to make it impossible that other neighboring countries, including Poland, to cry. I could have felt helpless while speaking with my mom that night at the border, but we are not helpless. You are not helpless. You need, and we need to act, and you make an impact, and this is the topic of today's conference. My path to this conference has started in last November, but it should not end here. We will still have many steps to go together. First, we really need to find sustainable solutions for refugees. This is an urgent task, and I call you, the smart Polish students, to think about those solutions. We ask to support these refugees, but we don't ask for gifts. Ukraine is a well-educated and hard-working nation. Please contact your companies, asking them to hire Ukrainian refugees who are now in the European Union countries. Please ask them to hire freelancers who stay in Kyiv, Zhytomyr, Lviv, or other Ukrainian cities. Ask them to place the orders with the Ukrainian companies. They are renewing their operations after the initial stock and are ready to work. Allowing Ukrainian people in business to work and pay taxes will be the best input to make an impact for Ukraine. Second, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are still in the blocked or temporarily occupied cities with no electricity, heating, or water, without the internet or mobile connection, and without opportunity to escape. These people need humanitarian assistance, especially the most vulnerable, elderly, children, people with chronic diseases. Please work with UK, Polish, or global humanitarian organizations to provide medicine, medical supplies, and food to the Ukrainians in the occupied cities. They will really appreciate that. Third, thousands of Ukrainian students were forced to quit studies in Ukraine. We don't know where they will be able to enter universities this summer. Thus, if you can support Ukrainian students who would like to study in the EU universities, please do so. Please campaign. Please also campaign in your universities to provide those students 100% scholarships, at least for the next year. These students are our future and the future of Europe. And most probably they lost their generational wealth back home. At the same time, you probably know that 200 rectors of the Russian universities have signed an open letter supporting Putin's war in Ukraine. I think European academia should seriously reconsider their cooperation with these institutions, as well as other Russian scientists and researchers. Please campaign for that. Fourth, we still need to do everything possible to increase the cost of the Putin's war in Ukraine. Hundreds of billion euro of Russian assets have been frozen abroad. If you are lawyers here, please think how to use this money for the reconstruction of Ukraine or support those in need, also in neighboring countries. I will be happy to discuss it with you. Fifth, during the last 2 weeks, you have seen that many international companies left Russia. It's good. But we need to attack Russia in different fronts: economic, cultural, sports, educational. Sometimes secondary sanctions are more painful for Russia than direct ones. If you have any creative ideas how to weaken the Russian military economy, please write to me. I will be happy to work with the leaders of G7 to implement them. I na koniec chciałbym powiedzieć, że 92% Ukraińców wierzy w nasze zwycięstwo. Bądź z Ukrainою. Pamiętajcie, razem jest 960 milionów. Wszystko możemy zrobić razem. I mamy misję historyczną Polski, misję historyczną Ukrainy, aby wspólnie chronić naszą ścieżkę i być liderem zmian w naszym regionie. Chwała wolności Ukrainy, chwała wolnej Polsce. Dziękuję bardzo.
Temat 2 procentami.
To można tylko po polsku.